Good evening, you're watching Primetime. I'm Tamanna Inamdar.
And my name is Aayush. Let's start off with the headlines. The government mops up 90,700 crore rupees revenue from the goods and services tax in August. That's a drop from the collections in July.
R.S. Sharma says interconnect charges cannot be used to make money. The TRAI chairman tells BloombergQuint incumbent telecom operators are free to challenge the decision in courts.
The government sets the ball rolling to introduce 5G in India by 2020, sets up a high-level committee and plans a 500 crore rupee fund.
Asian Development Bank slashes India's growth forecast even as it raises the forecast for China and the rest of emerging Asia.
Indian markets end almost flat after a topsy-turvy session. Rupee ends at a 6-month low as concerns over weak economic growth continue.
And China tightens the screws on WhatsApp, blocks the messaging app as it steps up censorship ahead of next month's Communist Party meeting. Well, straight on to the big story. Collections under the GST has come in at 90,669 crore rupees for the month of August. This is marginally lesser in comparison to the tax collected for the month of July. Payaswini Upadhyay now joins us with more detail. Payaswini, what does the breakup show you when you compare both the months?
Tamanna, very difficult at this point in time to draw any meaningful conclusions. But let me quickly share with you what immediately comes through as one reads these numbers. This initial figure of that we have as of September 25th of the collections, 90,670 crore rupees, does not include the transitional credits. Transitional credits are basically opening credits that businesses could have used as against their tax liability in August. So because the offline utility tool is not yet available for the Tran 1 form or the transition form, this 90,670 crore number is likely to go down because of this reason. That is first. The second reason that could lead into the reduction of this number is that the Tran 2 functionality, which is the deemed credit functionality, that is not yet available on the GSTN. The third conclusion that you can draw from this is that this 90,670 crore number will also go down as a result of refunds to exporters. So the lack of Tran 2, the absence of the offline utility tool for Tran 1 and the refunds, these are the three factors that at this stage we can say can impact this number and reduce this GST collection for August. One interesting thing that should be noticed is that the imports for IGST on imports in July was 20,964 crore rupees, and that has gone on to 23,180 crore rupees. So that sort of gives us some indication that imports have increased in the month of August. That's just a very first quick assessment of these numbers. Stay tuned, and we'll continue to get you more details on this.
Absolutely, Payaswini, just one point. I was going through a piece you did on BloombergQuint.com some time ago, and you had a quote from one of the experts saying that July is traditionally a slow month for industry, so he expects numbers to pick up. In that context, was there a larger expectation from August numbers?
Not really. Look, so July, August, September, they are all sort of considered as monsoon months, and around this time when Navratri starts in some parts of this country, Durga Puja in West Bengal, that's when the shopping season start and the sales pick up. So maybe those numbers will sort of reflect in the September collections. So these are the August collections that we are currently talking about. Maybe once we get the numbers for September in October, that's when maybe sales might get and the collections might pick up.
All right, Payaswini, thanks so much for that update. Tamanna, I hear that there's a lot more to talk about and analyze and dissect those GST numbers on Primetime Debate.
Yes, that is going to be the first issue we take up on Primetime Debate this evening. The GST collections have dropped, but what is the first reading of these numbers? We'll be joined by tax experts and a representative from CII. He's member CII National Committee on Taxation, Bipin Sapra, and Ritesh Kanodia will join us this evening to sort of talk about, where we go from here and what are the issues that need to be still ironed out on GST.
All right, that's going to come right up next on Primetime Debate. Now, moving on to another top story. TRAI Chairman R.S. Sharma says interconnect charges cannot be a profit driver for telecom companies in India. Speaking to BloombergQuint's Menika Doshi, Sharma defended the methodology used by the telecom regulator to arrive at the 6 paise per minute IUC charge.
TRAI floated a consultation paper in August of 2016, and we went through a process of about 13 months, and we heard all the stakeholders, every telecom service provider and other stakeholders, that is the customers, etc. We had open house discussions, and we finally had a workshop also where every telecom service provider presented their arguments. And then TRAI, based on all these inputs, went ahead and computed the actual cost which is incurred in handling the call, and it came to a figure of 5.9 paisa, and it rounded it off to 6 paisa, and then we issued the regulation on 19th of this month. And as you will see, there are, the regulation has an explanatory memorandum, which actually is pretty explanatory, in the sense that it contains 32 pages of explanation, which answers to that question as to why the TRAI took the review and other questions. And then it has the cost models and data sheets for computing this, and there are absolutely no assumptions in that. So essentially TRAI is duty bound to compute the cost and then fix that interconnect user charges.
So on the one hand we have stress, on the other hand we have now a potential reduction in revenue for the incumbent players. At least that is their allegation and calculation. You may not agree with that. Do the two square is my question to you. And the second part of my question is that they have suggested that they might consider going to court. This matter has gone to court once before the change in 2015 was made. Do you expect this to become a long litigious few years?
If IUC is actually a charge, a money which is reimbursed to you as a telecom operator for handling somebody else's call, and that is based on the work done, the payment is based on the work done, then you are basically being compensated for whatever work you do. So in what way does it really increase the stress is not very clear to me. I also think, and everybody agrees, that IUC charges cannot be a profit vertical for any company. That's the answer to the first question. The second question answer is that, well, in this country, everybody has a right to go to the court. Everybody has a legal right to approach the appropriate legal forum. And therefore, if the telecom service providers go, I have no comments to offer on that. They have a right. And we also have a right to defend the TRAI stand in the court.
Now, even as the IUC debate continues, the government is moving towards 5G speeds. Before we tell you what the government has got lined up, here is what 5G really is and how it could change everything.
Well, the Modi government has set up a high-level 5G committee to enable the rollout of 5G technology in India by 2020. This brings India on par with the rest of the world with respect to the proposed 5G rollout timeline. What are the government's plans to ensure that the 5G technology rollout is actually before the 2020 target? Arpan Chaturvedi of BloombergQuint has been tracking this story, and he joins us now with the details. Arpan, how realistic do you think it is for us to really see a 5G rollout by the year 2020? All right, if Arpan, if you could hear me right now, what I wanted to ask you initially was, so we'll connect to Arpan really soon, Tamanna,
Yeah.
but it's really interesting, right? Look at the kind of speeds we have right now with 4G. When you're talking about 5G, we're talking about speeds. Well, the whole world, like that video showed you, China, Japan, the rest of them have been testing this technology, and the speeds would be up to, wait for it, up to 100 gigabytes per second, 100 GB per second. Right now we're dealing with 50 to 100 Mbps at the best 4G level. We're talking about 100 gigabytes per second. I'm excited already for 2020.
Well, I was also saying that, we were 7 years late with 4G,
Yeah.
with 3G, late with 4G,
Yeah.
but we want to be up to speed with the rest of the world with 5G.
That's
What are the challenges? Will we manage the rollout?
Yeah.
Are big questions there. We'll try and get Arpan back on in a bit with more details, but let's move on to another big story today. There might be more pain in store for the Indian economy as the Asian Development Bank cuts its growth forecast for the country. The multilateral agency has, however, increased its estimates for the rest of emerging Asia. Ira is joining us now, and she's been going through that report. Ira, what are the highlights?
Forecasts have been revised downwards, while the rest of Asia has seen an uptick in its growth forecast. These are the numbers for developing Asia. They expect growth of 5.9% now compared to 5.7% earlier. For next calendar year, growth has been ticked up to 5.8% compared to 5.7%. The upside on the growth numbers is actually coming in from China. So if you look at the next chart, you'll see that ADB has pushed up its growth forecast for China. That's gone from 6.5 to 6.7% for the current year, and from 6.2 to 6.4% for the next year. What the Asian Development Bank said that some of the fiscal push coming in from within China and some unexpected upside from external demand has led them to revise their forecast higher in the case of China. In the case of India, the forecast has been revised downwards by 40 basis points for the current year and by about 20 basis points for the next year. Here, ADB says that there has been short-term disruption due to demonetization and the implementation of GST. No surprises there. But they do remain generally constructive on the long-term future, or even the medium-term future for the Indian economy. At 7%, their growth forecast is actually not that pessimistic, although this is calendar year. A lot of other agencies for the fiscal year are expecting growth to be well below the 7% mark. I just want to point out, apart from growth, the inflation forecast as well, just to make the point that India is not the only economy where inflation has been surprising to the downside. So for Asia as well, ADB has reduced the inflation forecast for the current year from 3.0% to 2.4%. So that is a substantial cut. And even for the next year, they see inflation being softer than what they had earlier anticipated.
Well, we were trying to connect to Arpan earlier on that 5G story. Now, that's a big story coming out today with the government actually setting up a high-level 5G committee. There's also a 500 crore rupee fund. Arpan, thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad we could finally connect to you. Now, give us a little bit more, some more details as to what actually happened at that meeting earlier today.
So that's right, Aayush. So the announcement today was made in a press conference by the telecom minister, and the thought process that he explained behind this decision was that if you see that India, whether it was 3G or 4G rollout, India had lagged behind from the rest of the world, and this is what they do not want. The minister said that we do not want this to happen when it comes to the 5G rollout, and therefore we have seen a specific deadline of 2020 as far as the 5G rollout is concerned. The minister also announced that initially the budget is 500 crore for the research and development purposes, which this high-level forum, which has been appointed, they will look into the research and development purposes. It has also officials from the Ministry of Telecom, from the Ministry of IT and Ministry of Science and Technologies, and this forum will do the initial research and groundwork for the telecom or the 5G rollout from the year 2020.
Arpan, you know what, and the whole world when it comes to telecom and technology is really gearing up for the India Mobile Congress, which is going to be tomorrow. We're going to be getting you all of that. Look forward to covering that event with you, Arpan. Tamanna, that's something I'm really excited about. All the biggest names in telecom, all the biggest names in the world of technology, well, they're all going to be there for the next 3 days in Delhi, and we're going to be getting you all the updates and developments from
Well,
there.
we're looking forward to all the updates from you, Aayush. Just one point, if we had 5G, maybe it would have been easier to connect to Arpan, like we were trying to in the last few minutes. So we're all waiting for that. And of course, Aayush will be covering that. The other big story today, Indian markets ended with marginal losses, making it the 6th straight day of losses, but it was not anything like the last 5 days. Nifty and Sensex staged a sharp intraday recovery as they pared losses to absolutely flat. Neeraj Shah sums up the market action in this report.
It was a good day if you are a short-term bull or a bull nevertheless, because the markets, after starting off on a weak note, almost 0.5% lower, ended off the day's lows. The last tick was in the green for all three, the Nifty, the Sensex and the Bank Nifty, which is actually a pretty heartening sign. The market breadth came back with a bang as well. Remember, Monday and the last Friday, it was adverse, 1:6 in favor of the declines. In today's session, quite the opposite, and the mid-cap and the small-cap indices did reasonably well for themselves. The small caps up about 1% in trade. The stock of the day or the start of the day has to be Avenue Supermarts, up about 17% at a point of time, ending the day about 8.5% higher after Goldman Sachs initiated coverage. Price targets of 1586, 50% upside, a market cap at the eventual price target of almost 1 lakh crores. So this one really stood out in trade. Then we had HUL come out sometime at the beginning of the day and raise a red flag of sorts when it comes to the rural recovery, and that led to the stock drifting down. At a point of time was down about 3.5%, ending the day about 2.5% off. And the other FMCG players like Bajaj Corp also corroborated the fact. So it wasn't a particularly healthy day for FMCG. It was a mixed day for oil sensitives. So crude spikes up and ONGC moves up about 4% in trade. A very interesting statistic on the Bloomberg terminal. All analysts as of now on the sell side have either a buy or a sell rate, a buy or a hold rating. None of the analysts have a sell rating. What about the others? So it had an impact on OMCs. BPCL was down 3.5, HP was down 2.5, IOC flat. But the oil exploration companies had a field day. Ceylan, Deep, Aban Offshore, all ending the day in the green. There were a couple of other stocks that we should focus on, namely the stocks in which we're seeing a continued uptrend. So Graphite India up about 9.5%, Edelweiss up about 9% in trade as well. Both of these stocks hitting fresh 52-week highs. In Edelweiss case, hitting life highs for itself. So all in all, a good day of trade, and it puts us into an interesting spot when it comes to the expiry, which is slated for day after tomorrow.
All right, now while the big pharma companies have been plagued by regulatory approvals in the West, one player seems to have bucked that trend.
Hyderabad-based Aurobindo Pharma has not only had more products approved for sale by the Food and Drug Administration than its largest Indian peers, but the number has often totaled more than that of its biggest 3 local rivals combined.
What makes this trend stand out is the fact that Aurobindo is achieving this with an R&D budget that's half to a third the size of its competitors. Last quarter, Aurobindo spent about $25 million on research and development, while Dr. Reddy's spent about $79 million in the same research costs.
This trend also highlights Aurobindo's change in strategy. While the big boys like Sun, Lupin and Dr. Reddy's focus on specific generics that deliver higher margins, Aurobindo looks to outcompete its rivals on price. Well, following its Asia-Pacific peers, the rupee ended at 65.45 against the dollar. This is the lowest level the rupee has ended in over 6 months. The fall in rupee comes amidst escalating tensions in the Korean peninsula. Foreign investors continued liquidating holdings in the domestic market on weak global as well as domestic cues, leading to the longest run of outflows since mid-August.
Unsecured loans have been growing at a steady pace, and Indian banks don't seem to have a problem with it, as it's one of the only lending segments to show rapid growth over the last 2 years. This year, the unsecured lending growth has remained above 30%, according to the data released by the RBI. Vishwanath Nair of BloombergQuint joins us with the details. Vishy, I'm guessing this is one sector in banking that banks would really be very excited about.
That's exactly how it is, Aayush. If you look at the way this loan segment has been growing, it is steadily in the 30 to 35% range. This includes credit cards as well as some of the other personal loans, unsecured personal loans that banks offer to these customers, as compared to the overall retail lending segment, which is growing at about 15 to 18%. So that difference, the divergence between the two segments is quite large. Now banks are saying that we are safe, we are doing good lending, we are trying to target the kind of customers who deserve loans and who have the capability of paying it back. However, if you remember 2008 and 9, when the world was reeling with the financial crisis, and Indian companies were also seeing job losses as well as salary cuts, people started defaulting on their personal loans and credit cards, which led to huge pressures on bank balance sheets and a rise in their NPAs. So that is still fresh. It's not something that was very long ago. Bankers say that this time around, because there is the presence of credit information companies, credit bureaus who give you good data about the customer as well as their own analytics, the banks their own analytics, they can assess the customer better and therefore they're giving out better loans. So this growth is safe, is essentially what the bankers are saying.
All right, thanks for that, Vishwanath Nair there. And just a quick reminder to all of those tuning in right now, we're getting your comments on the live show. We're loving them, and we're going to read out some of them at the end of the show, so keep them coming. Now, India's Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said India will continue to provide development-related and medical assistance to Afghanistan, but there shall be no Indian boots on Afghan soil. Sitharaman hosted U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis in New Delhi today. Although she said India welcomes President Donald Trump's new Afghanistan strategy, India's role in stabilizing the country will not involve deploying troops in the war-torn nation. The Defense Minister's statement can be seen as a continuing policy which began when erstwhile Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee refused to accede to former President George Bush's request for Indian troops in Iraq.
India welcomed President Trump's new U.S. strategy for Afghanistan announced last month. India's contribution to Afghanistan has been for a very long time and has been consistently on developmental issues. We've built dams, we've built hospitals, we shall continue doing all of them. Medical assistance is also provided by India. We give them the facilities in our hospitals. So India's contribution has been on these grounds, and we shall expand if necessary. However, of course, we've made it very clear that there shall not be boots from India on the ground.
For India-born Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, hitting refresh is imperative for an organization to make a sustained long-term impact. No wonder then, Hit Refresh is the title of Nadella's maiden book, which was launched today at Microsoft's Ignite conference in Orlando, USA. The book is a memoir of the company's ongoing transformative journey, interspersed with anecdotes from Nadella's personal life and career. The book comes with a foreword by Microsoft founder Bill Gates, who's known Nadella for 20 years. But much more than just a memoir, the book includes a roundup on the challenging future of technology like artificial intelligence, mixed reality, and quantum computing.
Well, how well do you know the rules of cricket? Well, most of us would take slight at that question. After all, it's the sport that most of us have grown up watching or playing. Here are the new rules, though, framed by ICC. Now, a player can now be sent off the field for rest of the match for any serious misconduct. A batsman can now be caught, stumped or run out even if the ball bounces off the helmet worn by a fielder or wicketkeeper. The thickness of the edge of the bat can be no more than 40 mm, and the thickness of the bat must not exceed 67 mm at any point.
Umpires will have a gauge to check that bats meet the new regulations. If the batsman grounds the bat on the crease but loses contact with the ground at time of wickets being put down, the batsman will not be out if the ball bounces more than once after being delivered by the bowler and before it reaches the popping crease of the batsman. It will of course be called a no ball. We're now joined by former General Manager of the BCCI, Amrit Mathur, over the phone line from Delhi. Amrit, thanks so much for joining us on BloombergQuint. How do you look at the new rules? Are they some sort of an improvement from the old rules?
Mr. Mathur, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so what is the big difference between the old and the new rules? That's the essential question.
Well, these are important changes in the laws, but nothing really radical. The team still plays with 11 players. But I think there's an important question in terms of how the game has evolved. One important change is in terms of regulating the size of the bat. Because it was seen that the balance between bat and ball was being disturbed with heavy bat, small boundaries, misses were going into the stand. So I think it's a good move to restrict the kind of bat the player can use and the amount of wood it can take. Similarly, I think there's an important...
I think the excitement is about, removing a player from a field if they don't behave. I think that's the one highlight. And will that create more discipline, or will that maybe be controversial as it really gets into practice?
No, I think that's a change that is needed. There have been many instances of poor behavior by players in the field. So now the umpires have the power to send somebody off by showing him a red card as in football, and the team will then have to play with 10 and not have a replacement. Similarly, there are new changes in terms of what constitutes unfair play. For instance, if a bowler deliberately bowls a no ball, he can be taken off. Similarly, if a batsman is stepping out of the crease and standing in what is called the danger area, he can be warned and the umpire can sort of adjudicate and step in. Another important change is in terms of use of technology and the expansion. And now the DRS will be applicable to T20 games. Teams will allow one appeal in terms of umpiring decisions. And even in test matches, the teams will only have 2 unsuccessful reviews. And earlier the system was that after 80 overs, they got another 2. So I think these are corrections and adjustments in laws which were needed.
Amit, for speaking with us. And that's pretty much all the top stories from Primetime. But before we go, a lot of you have been writing in, and we want to read some of that out. One comment from Tanz Latif, who says, and comments on our 5G story this evening, saying that you mean 4G speeds will be reduced to 2G in 2020. Well, we hope not.
Yeah, it sounds like, getting a new iPhone, right? When you get a new one, well, then the old ones start acting funnily. That's what everyone seems to be suggesting with conspiracy theories. You also have some on Facebook coming in. Thanks so much for joining us. Piyush Verma, can't wait for 5G. Tamanna and I, and BloombergQuint as well. And of course, you got Bhavesh Trada. Thanks so much for joining in. He's saying, nice coverage, nice channel. All speaks well. Great team with BloombergQuint.
Yeah,
well
and you have Devendra saying, does Modi's fiscal stimulus benefit and lift up the economy? Well, that is a big question that has constant debate on it. Speaking of debates, it's time for Primetime Debate. We'll take a very short break. The first story that we're looking at in detail today is the GST collection numbers, which have just about come out. We're analyzing them with our experts. We're also talking about the huge amounts of money. 9,000 crore rupees is what has been sold in online sales this time. And of course, we'll play out the most important and interesting bits of the R.S. Sharma interview. So don't forget to join us in just a bit from now.
Stay tuned to BloombergQuint.